This is the new Tapo D210, and this is its more impressive cousin, the D225. Now, these are brand new video doorbells from TP-Link, and they have a couple of the most interesting features I've seen on video doorbells, including things like 24/7 video recording. Now, they also follow a pattern that TP-Link started a few years ago, but has really honed in on. These both really don't require a subscription, and with that being so prevalent on video doorbells today, this is something we gotta dig into. Hello Automators, thanks for tuning in again. I'm Brian from Automate Your Life, and my goal on the channel is to save you time and money on your journey to live smarter. Now, both of these new video doorbells are so inexpensive, and in today's day and age, when you combine that with the lack of a need of subscription plus a good set of features, this becomes a really interesting option for a lot of people. Now let's start with what we get in the box. Now, these two doorbells are very similar, and they're so similar that the differences in the box are very minor. Each of these comes with a smart chime. This is a Wi-Fi connected chime. You get to pick from a number of different doorbell chimes, and of course, you can control the volume. It takes a single 120 volt plug in, and there are buttons on these to control both the chime and the volume, so you can actually stay out of the app instead of forcing you to go do that control there. There's a lot of mounting hardware in the box, and of course you're going to get the screws and the anchor mounts. You're also going to get a wall mount guide, but those are going to be all used in conjunction with the different wall mounts that you get. This is where one of the big differences comes in. So you'll only get what's called a vertical wedge mount with the D225. That provides a 5-degree down angle to your doorbell if you have a porch that's a little higher up. Now, both of these come with a horizontal wedge. Now, this mount gives you a 15-degree angle to whichever side you'd like. Now, what I like about these angle mounts is that they can be turned around. It might surprise you to find out that not every company designs a wall mount to go in both directions. The way this all works together is you get this mount connection piece, and that goes into the back of your video doorbell. Now, that connection piece is either attached directly to the wall if you don't need a wedge mount, or it can be tied in to the wedge mount with these little screws that you get in the bag. So it becomes a system of wall mounts that work together. Now, when you need to take your doorbell off the wall, you get this little pin. It's intended to release the doorbell from that mounting system. I like that the hole for this is on the very back of the video doorbell and that it's hard to see. I also like that TP-Link has an anti-theft setting in the app, so the overall system is pretty good. Let's look at the doorbells themselves. Now, the two models look very similar except for the colors. That's because you have 3 elements on the front of them. Now, the top is a lens where you'll get a slightly wider field of view with the more expensive D225. You're also getting 2 infrared lights for night vision, but these are capable of color night vision if you have some lights around your porch. Now, below that is a push button with an LED ring on it, and there's a spotlight around it. Now, one really neat feature here is you can modify the color of that LED ring. You can also modify how bright the spotlight is in the settings, and that's going to help you with that color night vision. Now, at the bottom of these is a PIR, or passive infrared motion sensor. Now, obviously, that is going to detect motion in front of these doorbells, and there's a reason that this is used instead of just using the camera lens. Now, while both of these have really large batteries and will last a long time on your home without a recharge, one of the reasons for that is that the PIR sensor is being used to wake up the camera and the recording system. That PIR sensor can see quite far out into your yard, and as far as I can tell, it's about a 5-meter distance that can see. That's actually where some of those wedge mounts become really important to use in the case where your front yard is shorter than 5 meters. Now you could, in that case, be constantly triggering these cameras to turn on and to look at people out on the street, for example. As I said, these both have really large batteries, and the D225 has a much larger one if you're after some longer battery life. Now, the D210 is a battery-only option, so it cannot be wired into your home's existing chime, whereas the D225 can. That means when you're looking at the back of these two doorbells, the D225 looks a lot more complicated, and it's where you get a few extra things in the box. You do get some little bolts that go into what are called poles, so you can wire into your chime. The other thing you might notice on the back of the 225 is that it has a small cover that can be opened up, and that reveals both a USB-C charging port as well as a micro SD card slot. You can use micro SD cards up to 512 gigabytes in both of these because the D210 has those same ports on the bottom. Now both of them carry a little speaker on them as well as a small microphone for communicating with people who come up to your home. Now for me, I like the design of the micro SD card in the back of the D225, but let's talk about some of the biggest features that come with both of these doorbells. These are the things that tend to set these apart from some of their competitors. There are things about these video doorbells that people won't like, and that's okay. But there are 5 things that I think just about every one of us could say is an incredible feature, or at least a top shelf feature. Now, let's start with the first one called Always On. Now, Always On is how you get 24/7 video recording. Now you can only do this on the D225 when it is hardwired in, and it comes with a single negative that will stop some people. However, when I tell you about the second big feature, it probably won't matter to you. Always On means that you get that 24/7 video recording, but it also means that you get pre-recording. It gives you 2 to 4 seconds of footage that is recorded before an event starts. That is, of course, because it's doing that 24/7 recording, and it can just attach those few seconds before the event happens to the video file. The combination of those two things puts the D225 in another echelon of video doorbells because you have to pay through the nose to get that with Google's Nest Video Doorbell, their wired version. You gotta pay for the top level of the Nest Aware subscription. The one drawback to Always On is that you cannot use your existing chime. So even though you will be hardwired into your chime, it will not work. And I'm sure this is a power-based situation, but I think that feature is going to be worth it to most people. No matter which doorbell you choose, you can have a lot of different chimes in your home. I've already shown you the smart chime option that Tapo sends with their doorbell. That becomes a great option, but it becomes even better when you find out that you can use multiple of these for each doorbell. On top of that, if you connect Tapo to Google or Amazon, you can use all of those smart speakers and smart displays as chimes.
Someone is at the Tapo_D225.
That, plus the fact that the D225 could use your home's chime, means you can have this entire array of chimes, and all of those can have different ringtones assigned to them. In fact, Amazon has all of these seasonal ones that you can use today. So does Tapo, actually. So there are great options here, but there's an even better option for a chime. Now, most video doorbells send you a notification when someone rings your doorbell, and then you have to tap on that notification, then your phone opens the app, then the app has to forward you to the exact right screen, and then the video feed has to get started, and let's be honest, a lot has to load in before you can even answer your door. This set of doorbells instead sends you a phone call. You answer that using the normal way you would answer a call on your phone, and you are therefore almost instantly communicating with the person on the other side of your doorbell. It's a good communication system, and it's a lot faster to come up than other doorbells I've used. Now, this is something that I think every company should be doing, and actually, I don't get why other companies haven't in many cases. Now, basically, if a video doorbell cannot detect the things you need it to detect, and you can't get it to make a good recording, it's useless. Now, throughout today's video, you will see the footage, and honestly, I can't show you exactly how it looks because YouTube converts our footage and we've converted the footage a few times. It's just not gonna look exactly the same as when you get it onto your phone or you look at it on a computer. But more or less, I have found this footage to be very good and basically as good as any video doorbell out there. These come with a huge sensor and the camera specifications are really good. And in the tips and tricks section, I'll show you what I mean there. But the one thing I could say about these is that they do have this fisheye look to their perspective. And so around the edges, things don't always look amazing on fisheye lenses, but because of that large sensor, they're doing pretty good. The color night vision is one of Tapo's best camera features, period. They've been working on that for a couple of years now. It requires a very small amount of light and then it gives you good color night vision. The two IR LEDs are not the furthest reaching, but the night vision looks good, and overall this is really good footage. I've had good luck seeing people's faces and getting clear moments out of my footage. And that's probably the biggest feature of any video doorbell. But you need it to be able to detect different events happening. For me, the different modes of detection that are available and the system that's in place that allows you to customize how you're doing the detection is really important, and it's really good on these. Now, the only difference between the two video doorbells around this is that you cannot do package detection with the 210. You can set all of these different areas for each different detection type, which is so important for narrowing down the notifications you get. Now, this is the same system that was used on a set of wire-free cameras that I've shown a number of times on the channel, and it works just as well with these doorbells. Now, because the detection system is so good, you can also get these video doorbells to display the video feed on smart displays at the right times. This is a really easy set of automations, and I'll show you that in the automation section. Now, I haven't seen this last feature on any other doorbell, actually, and I'd love it if you guys would correct me if I'm missing the boat here, but this is just a fun one, but I've really enjoyed it. Now, you can change the color of the LED on your button. There are a few options, and it gives your doorbell a bit of a different look when someone comes up to it. You can also change the brightness of the spotlight, which is around that LED. That little adjustment plus the LED color change really does change how your doorbell looks, especially in the evenings. Now that you know some of those big features and some of the bigger reasons that you might want to have a look at these, let me show you how to get these set up and installed. We're gonna get our Tapo video doorbell set up inside of the Tapo application. Now, you can download this for either Android or iOS, and basically make sure that your Tapo doorbell has been charged. Mine has been charging for a little while, so I can unplug that. It does take a few hours to get this charged up. Now, you want to get it into this state basically as you go to start. So it's flashing green and red. I just turned it on by holding the on-off button for a few seconds. Now, that's what you're going to get here in just a second. So there's a plus up at the the top right there. We're going to choose Doorbells, and this is the Tapo D225, so that's the one I'm choosing here. And here's where they tell you, hold the on-off button to power up your device, wait about 30 seconds until it's blinking, and then hit that. Now we have to connect this device to Wi-Fi. In order to do that, we have to go to our phone's settings. Inside of settings, head into Wi-Fi, and then you will choose the network being broadcast by this. You're going to tap on that, and it's going to connect your phone. You might get a little notification on Android that there is no internet connection. So just check that, say that's okay, I want to stay connected. And you can see now it's finding the doorbell and it's bringing up our Wi-Fi information. So now you have to select your network, your Wi-Fi network, put in your password, and then you will hit next. Now it's going to make that
to Wi-Fi.
There you go. You might not be close to where you're going to eventually put this doorbell. That's okay for right now. We're going to get an opportunity to kind of check things. Now we get to name the device. You can name it whatever you'd like, probably something simple like front doorbell. And now you get to pick where you've placed this device. I've already created some areas in my home inside of the Tapo app, but you can just hit custom, and then you're able to pick from a number that they've already created for you. So obviously it's not going to go in your living room, but if you did want to choose that, you can. I'm just going to pick outdoors, and we're going to go forward. Now there are icons for your video doorbells at the bottom here. And now we're basically ready from a setup and basic configuration standpoint, but there's a lot more to go through here. The first thing is whether or not you want cloud care services. So what you can see is unlimited cloud storage, rich notifications with snapshots, and what they call a smart sort. You can get a free trial for this. I think for myself, you know, the rich notifications are nice to have, but you're going to see why that's maybe not required with this doorbell. So I'm just going to skip. These will update with firmware. So you have to pick an update time. It'll automatically happen in the background. I think obviously in the mornings or late nights are kind of the better options. One of the great pieces of this doorbell is that you can put in a micro SD card. Now this is in the couple of doorbells that we're working with Tapo here. And this doorbell, you know, the micro SD card can go up to 512 gigabytes. So you can put quite a large one in. I'm only putting in a 32 gigabyte. I find generally if you're putting an SD card outdoors, you want to maybe not buy the most expensive one that's going to last for years and years, but you want to buy a decent one so that it doesn't instantly die on you. Now the pins are this way into the device, and you're just going to push that in.
The SD card is not formatted. Please format it according to the app guidelines.
Now we're kind of moving into the installation process. There's two ways to install this. If you want to wire it into your home, there are some really interesting features, so I want to show you that. Here is about what's called always on mode. This enables two features and it kind of takes away one. So you get pre-recording and 24/7 recording as an option with this video doorbell. And that's with always on, and that means that it is wired in to your home. Now that makes it incompatible with a traditional chime. You end up bypassing that. Now obviously not a big deal if you have a chime like this or other things like Amazon speakers that can kick out a notification for you. And if you go from that always on, that wiring in standpoint, get yourself an electrician or make sure you know what you're doing here. This is an 8 to 24 volt capable doorbell, so it's got quite the range. It's quite good. I'm going to be doing just from the battery standpoint. This has got a huge battery in it. Now we're going to go through how we're going to locate this and how we're going to place it on our home. But in general, you know, you want it about 4 feet above the ground, avoid obstructions, swaying trees, vehicles, pedestrians. So they're talking about all these things, but I can tell you I've worked with Tapo cameras in the past, and generally you can get around a lot of these issues. They're even saying the direct sunlight. All of those things will bring down the reliability of this, but not necessarily crush how they work. They do very well at handling a lot of these things. You're just going to find a general location. Don't do the final installation here because you're about to see a preview of the camera. So a couple of things. If the porch depth, or basically out to the road, is less than 5 meters, mount your doorbell to the sidewall using a mounting wedge to kind of turn it. But if it exceeds 5 meters, just install it facing straight forward. Generally, they want you to mount this straight on, but in some cases, if you can't get it 1.2 meters off the ground, or that 4 feet, you might end up with a bit of a different performance. Now, this is a PIR motion sensor, and that's what's detecting out quite far that somebody is coming up to the home. It kind of warns this device, but you can use the vertical wedge to give it a 5-degree down, and that might be important to kind of get that full distance and the right view for your camera, or that horizontal wedge in case you're kind of mounting far off the side. They show you all the diagrams for that. Now, they're going to give us a preview here and show us the Wi-Fi signal. So this is when you want your video doorbell out on in the location that you think you're going to place it. You can test this again and again and again, and you can always make adjustments later. But this just gives you that good signal, or that good feeling that your Wi-Fi signal's going to be good. Okay, so if you don't see the 3 bars there, you can probably get away with 2, but down to 1, you're going to want to fix the Wi-Fi signal out there. Now, if you have a chime, like I do, which you should in the box, you can pair with this chime or pair with a different hub. If you don't have a chime or a hub, you can hit that down there. Now I'm going to hit add new chime, and we're going to plug this in. And again, you got to get it to where it's blinking red and green. And you just hold that reset button for a few seconds if it's not doing that. So I'm just plugging that in. It's blinking red and green. And here it goes. It's going to go through the Wi-Fi process again. Now it's connecting to the network. What do you call it? Okay, it's called Smart Chime. And again, we're going to pick the firmware timeline for that unit. Obviously, you kind of want to set it at the same time as the doorbell because you want that system running all together. If you're going to install this on your home, you need a few things. Now, obviously, you need your wedge plates that you're going to use. You can see I've already installed mine, and I've already prepped the wires and the wire nuts on the back of my doorbell. So you're going to need whatever those things are. I'm going to show you how to make that decision. And then you're also going to need this little thing so you can take those mounts off as you go. You're going to need your smartphone so you can preview what's going on with the doorbell. You're going to need the mounting hardware that came in the package. And if you're going to be installing this, you're probably going to want a drill or a screwdriver. You'll want the drill if you're going to be installing fully into your wall, and then you're going to want a drill bit for that. Now, 6 millimeters is what they're showing. So you do get the little guideline here. It's a 6 millimeter drill bit that you're going to want. And then you can see your 2 spots on that guide. You can actually stick this on the wall too. You're going to want the stickies if you're using that method, and you're going to want a measuring tape right there. So that should have you basically ready to install. You might need a couple of things for your specific situation, but there you go. The first thing you need to do is measure out the situation. Make sure that where you're planning to place this is around 4 feet up. Now, the next thing you're going to want to do is check out the view. You're in general going to want to avoid you know, the sides of your home. You want to get a good viewpoint. So I've already kind of checked mine out, so I know I want the wedge mount and I've got it oriented the right way. But you're going to want to check out where you're about to place it. So that's about where my feed is going to look right there. I think I've got it mounted the best way. Now, you should have a chime somewhere in your home, and you know, depending on what you're using here, you might have to make modifications from a wiring standpoint. There's actually a little guide. If you're going to use the always on feature, you do have to bypass something. Mine actually has the voltage rating right there, 16 volts. You can look at the actual device here and see if there's a rating on there, but I have yet to see one with the actual rating. Now, if you're having to make modifications, it is in there. But before I go doing any work, I have to make sure that all the electrical is turned off. So turn off your breaker, check things, make sure that the chime is not working, make sure that your doorbell is no longer lit up, and yes, check it with a pen tester. Got this off. Take this one off. Now, one thing I forgot to mention here, you're going to need to get these straightened out. So you will need just a little set of pliers to kind of get this all straightened out. So when you're making the connections with the wire nuts, they're good connections. You got to get these wires through. We got to get close to mounting here. Make sure you got this pointed up. Make sure you've got your wedge the right way. Come in. Get the wire nuts on. And what you want to do is you want to line up the two wires together. Then you want to twist. And they should start to twist together a little bit. You put all your wires in here once you feel like those connections are good. Now, in the end, I decided this was a better setup. So put the screw in here because it's closer to where the wires come out. So now just got one screw to put here. You also need these tiny little screws just to attach the two mounts together. So make sure you do that. There's 4 holes. We did hardwire into the wall, and you know, I can still see the battery percentage, how high that battery is. But when I came back into the app, it actually told me right away, hey, you've switched to hardwire mode. So that's really great to see. It recognized that. And if I want to turn on that always on mode, so you know, that's where you get the pre-recordings and the 24/7 recordings. If I want that, they tell me you got to bypass your chime. So that's what the third wire is for. You're not going to be able to use that traditional chime, but you see, before I actually turn on always on mode, I have to confirm that I've done this work. And they show you the 2 pins that you need to connect. When I'm ready to turn that on, if I ever want to turn on always on, I can make that quick adjustment. You can get an electrician in, but I like how seamless it was to go between battery power and hardwired power. These can be pretty hard to get right. It seems like a simple device. You just stick it on the front of your home and it'll work, right? But we'll probably have a few people coming to this video to complain about the performance of either these video doorbells or others that they have on their home today. So let me give you a few tips that will get your video doorbell running better. And while some of these will be specific to the Tapo ones we're talking about today, lots of you should be able to apply this to what you have. Now, Tapo says that you need to install their video doorbells at a height of 4 feet. This first tip is to follow that. And the reason for that is because these devices and their camera systems are trained to look at objects at that approximate height. A few inches here or there are not going to change that, but these aren't like the other smart video cameras that you install at 10 to 15 feet up in the air. These are trained to look at people and vehicles at a specific angle. So really pay attention to that height requirement because it matters for their detections. Tapo also shows us this screen in the setup process. It specifically shows you that the distance of 5 meters is really important. Now, many video doorbells will have this kind of a screen during the setup process, and you'll notice that they're telling you if it's less than 5 meters to the curb out to public property, then you'll want to mount this doorbell sideways and then use a wedge mount. Now, that will turn it towards people are walking up to your home. Now, if it's 5 meters or more, they're saying just mount it as you normally would, pointed out on your walk. Now, this is because of that PIR motion sensor that I mentioned earlier in the video. It can see about 5 meters out, and it will be constantly triggered by people out at the curb of your home if the distance is less than 5 meters. This specification is something to really pay attention to because it will affect how often the camera is being turned on after that motion sensor is triggered. This could drain your battery very fast if you don't pay attention to that setting, and it could mean you're constantly getting motion detection notifications and recordings you don't want. If a company gives you a system like Tapo does, where you can set individual areas per detection type, then you can eliminate those notifications and those recordings from happening out on that curb. So for me, while the camera will be turned on consistently by the motion sensor, I don't actually care. Tapo's system works, and it does eliminate things like people and motion detection recordings and notifications from happening. Now, I've noticed it is still recording vehicles sometimes, but I'm okay with that, and I've turned off those notifications. SD cards are an important method for recording, and a lot of people will run out there and buy the maximum size SD card. That's not my recommendation for you, as these kinds of cameras can be heated quite a bit by the sun or just ambient temperature outside, and heat is a big problem for SD cards. You might end up burning out a card. So going out there and buying the maximum 512 gigabyte SD card, well, it might cost you because you're probably going to replace it within a couple of years. Buy something smaller. For those of you that are wondering what brand to buy, another tip for you is that many companies will give you recommendations for the brands that they know work really well with their doorbell. Look for those, and there's actually a help file inside of Tapo's app on that very topic. The other tip for you is if a company can't or won't give you that information, then they might not have done that testing, and that should have you running the other way. We need to get good recordings out of your video doorbell, or it's useless, obviously. Re-trigger times are a setting usually you can find. You should have that option, and they usually kind of set it in the middle of their range. Set it to 0 is my advice, because that will start a new recording as soon as the previous one has ended. You won't miss any part of an event then. Also, check the maximum recording length time and set that as high as you can. The apps will constantly tell you, hey, this is gonna drain your battery, and it will in some cases, but those are the best settings to make sure you're going to get a full recording. And quite frankly, if you're not going to get a full recording, what's the point? Now, when we talk about the quality of footage, a lot of people focus on the resolution. These are 2K cameras. That's a great specification, but the best spec to look at is the size of the sensor. That, in combination with the resolution, will tell you how well this camera can perform in a number of situations. Now, the other thing that can really mess with how good of footage you're getting is the frame rate. Set that as high as you can, and that will keep blurring to a minimum when you try to look at a freeze frame or determine who someone is at your home. Now, at night, you have to look at that specification for the IR LEDs. Those are what are going to provide you that black and white night vision. And again, you can see frame rates drop off at night, so that's an important thing to check on. However, some cameras have color night vision. That will require a little bit of light on your porch, likely from a different source than this, but this one has a little spotlight on it. But the worst footage I find comes out at dusk or dawn. You know, those IR LEDs, they don't turn on till later in the evening, and there's not a lot of light. So leaving a porch light on or having that porch light turn on before someone gets to your porch can be very beneficial to getting good footage. We'll talk about an automation that works for this camera in that way in the automation section of today's video. One of the biggest problems that people will have is that the Wi-Fi signal is not strong enough out there. You should definitely check that in your app. You can actually see the signal strength. It has to be strong enough, and the type of Wi-Fi. So that Wi-Fi setting has to be good enough to be able to pipe a live stream across your network onto your smart displays or your phone. Things like Wi-Fi extenders are going to introduce quite a bit of delay. That would obviously be a big problem in your discussions with people on the other side of the door. Also, having a number of Wi-Fi mesh hops to get out to your video doorbell will do a similar thing potentially. It'll slow down the video feed from coming up, or it might stop it from working altogether. Now, when you're choosing a video doorbell, the storage options for the footage really matter, okay? A lot of people will probably come to this video and say, you know, that SD card option isn't a great storage solution. But actually, these have a dual storage solution for you as long as you're willing to pay for that cloud subscription. Now, it'll record to both the SD card and the cloud in that case. Why I really like the SD card option over some others is because in the case where your internet goes out, these can still record to the SD card. In the case where your Wi-Fi is out, these can still record. It's all on board here. So these can make the decision all on board them to record to that SD card. Any other local storage solution is going to rely on your network inside of your home. And there are certain people who will come and say that they've wired their video doorbell to their network at home. That's a great option if you can do it. It's a great way to do things. But generally, people only have Wi-Fi as an option. And so this gets you a local storage option that doesn't rely on the network inside of your home. The only Achilles heel to this is the scenario where that SD card gets stolen with your video doorbell. Even attacks like the Flipper Zero cannot affect this kind of a solution when it comes to local recording. So think about how you're going to be using this. Think about the potential attacks that could happen to you. And this type of scenario eliminates almost all of them. One of the most exciting aspects of smart products is how they work with other stuff in your home. And a video doorbell can actually be fairly hard to integrate and automate with, but there are some really interesting options here. Now, I don't know if you've noticed during the video, but as this has detected me, there's a light in the background going on and off. Now, first off, the integrations available today are probably not the final integrations that you'll have with these. TP-Link is a company that tends to make sure that their integrations are working pretty well, and I just want to say that because I've seen them continually work on this as part of their business. I think that's very important to understand when you're looking at a doorbell like this. Now, don't go out and buy products for a promise of the future, okay? But that's just what I've seen over time. So a great example of that is actually one of the integrations that works today. You can connect this to Samsung SmartThings, and as of the middle of last year, you couldn't do that, neither with the doorbells like this or cameras from Tapo into SmartThings. So it's a fairly recent development. Now, that integration gets you the opportunity to start an automation when motion is detected or is no longer detected by your Tapo doorbell. You can also start an automation when the doorbell is pressed or when your battery gets to a specific level. With Google, the automation options are fairly simple. When the doorbell is pressed, you can get the video to display on your Google Smart Displays with this kind of a routine. That's a custom command that you're doing as an action in that automation. However, the best integration is with Amazon. The feed comes up and it doesn't have a lot of delays. You can two-way communicate on smart displays from Amazon, and they have 3 triggers for their routines inside of their system. That means you can start an automation anytime that the doorbell sees motion, sees a person, or if the doorbell is pressed. And again, I'm going to go back to the fact that those automation options don't require a subscription. This is a huge deal, and it is so rare to have a combination of no subscription with person detection, and then to have it work too. So one of the best automations I think you can make today is to do person detection on these doorbells and then have it show up on your Amazon smart displays. Now this automation will bring up the feed immediately, but an even better version of this automation is something that I've shown in a tutorial that we did previously on Automate Your Life. This is the version of that automation that brings up 4 cameras onto a single smart display. Now you have to make sure that your video doorbell is in the right group that you're requesting in that automation. And if you don't know how to make this fully work, there is a link to that tutorial down below in the description. Now the Tapo cameras and their video doorbells, they work really well in this scenario. The other automation that I have found fairly useful is to use motion detection or person detection to turn on lighting on my front porch or coming up to the door. Now, this will depend on the layout of your porch, how much success you'll have with this, because it will determine how early you can get that detection to happen. But generally, if you use a good lighting system that is communicating locally in your home, this will happen well before someone gets to your door, and they will have lighting. Now, of course, path lighting would be a really great option for this kind of a scenario, but if we remember, it's really important to have good lighting for these doorbells to give you the best footage, and that color night vision is a really great option to have. But in order to have that work, I actually would suggest that you use an outdoor motion sensor to turn on that lighting well before someone comes up to your home. I think this is critical for getting good footage out of your video doorbell, so you're actually supporting your footage with that. So for me, I'm using a Philips Hue outdoor motion sensor, and I'm using that to turn on my outdoor Philips Hue lights. This is an easy way to get good visuals out of your video doorbell and the better way to automate your life. And finally, when you come home, you might want to put your video doorbell into a privacy mode. This is possible with Amazon's application. I think it's great to do this just for a few minutes. You can wait about 5 minutes after you've arrived in the area to turn back on your video doorbell's recording capabilities. And then you're not recording yourself coming in and out of your home. These new Tapo video doorbells have been performing really well for me, and I am more than happy to recommend their use in a lot of situations for you guys. These are inexpensive, and Tapo has built a pretty good ecosystem around them for you to get a lot done. The footage looks great. The detection options are really positive, and in the near future, I'll be including these doorbells in a comparison guide. Check below in the description for the links to these great doorbells. Both of them could be very useful, and obviously you want to pick them based on the details we've given you today. Generally, I would recommend the D225, but if you're still unsure as to whether or not you'd like to purchase one of these, or you want to look at some more options, well, our video up on screen right now compares 4 of the most popular models out there today. Go check that out, and you can see how these ones stack up. I think you might be surprised. Otherwise, thanks for watching today, and of course, live smart.